And that is definitely a way in which I was able to learn a lot of information in a shorter amount of time. For me personally, I found this probably the most beneficial technique. Everyone, it's Derin here. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're a new viewer, welcome to my channel. As a lot of you guys can tell, if you watch my videos already, I am back at home. It is the Easter holiday weekend, so I'm back at home with my family, and I think by the time you guys are watching this video, it's either going to be Easter Sunday or Easter Monday. So if that's the case, then happy Easter everyone. I hope you guys have had an amazing Easter, and yeah, I hope you guys are just enjoying like the time off school and uni in general. For a lot of you guys though, I know you're probably gonna say you're not, because Easter holidays is probably full of a ton of revision and cramming for you guys. This, I relate. I know that this is the time that everyone gets their heads down and tries to focus for exam season, and this is the time for me personally where I really flip over my grades. I don't know why I do this to myself each and every year, but I am a crammer. It's just in my nature. I just learned to accept it, and so for me, Easter holidays is essentially when I want to say I really begin thorough revision, which I know sounds bad, but that's just me, and is when I really shock everyone around me, because it's the time where I get a lot of hard work done, and so when it comes to exam season, I end up getting grades that no one expected, not even myself sometimes, because I just mastered some tips and tricks which have really helped me to rapidly turn around my grades and do well. So yeah, that is exactly what today's video is going to be, sharing those tips and tricks which have really helped me throughout my academic career. What's the word? Academic time, my education, I don't know, you guys get what I'm trying to say. But yeah, essentially these are just some tips and tricks which have really helped me along the way, and will hopefully help a lot of you guys who are watching this video preparing for your exam. And so yeah, without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump straight into the video. Okay, so before getting started with like the specific tips and tricks to follow in this video, the first thing that I want to put out there, and it's something which helped me massively throughout my kind of just like time at school, is that when preparing for exams and really immersing yourself into revision and stuff, a massive thing which I encourage each and every one of you guys to do is just remind yourself that you're not in competition with anyone but yourself. I know that this may be easier said than done, because if you're seeing your friends do this much revision, or if you see your friends get these grades, you might feel the urge to want to compare yourself and question why you haven't achieved those grades, or why you're not doing that much revision. But honestly, each and every person is doing their own thing, everyone has their own paths, and everyone does things their own way. So without getting too deep, essentially what I'm trying to say is just stay in your own lane. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing. Just focus on yourself and what you need to do and where you want to be in life and what you want to achieve. Okay, this is really starting to sound deep, but you get what I mean, because the worst thing you could do is achieve really amazing results or work super hard and then kind of convince yourself that that wasn't enough, when in reality it always is enough and it will always be enough. So yeah, that's the first thing that I just want to get out there, and it's something which I think is super important. And so yeah, anyways, moving on from that little life talk, first tip which I am going to be talking about in today's video is all about your notes and organization. So for me personally, I know this is going to sound really bad, but for a lot of my subjects, specifically in my GCSE exams and my AS exams, I made a lot of my notes during Easter holidays, for the simple fact that my notes folder throughout the year was just really unorganized, and there were loads of missing gaps, and for me that was just a lot of stress, and I thought I'd rather start again. And B, I actually found out that I was making a lot of notes from resources that weren't exam board endorsed. So my tips to you guys is firstly, if you have already made notes, just make sure that those notes are like very well organized in the order of your exam specification. I haven't said that in a while. Make sure that they're organized in the exam specification, add some color to them if you haven't already, and just make sure that they're very clear in one folder which you can easily refer to them whenever you want. But if that doesn't apply to you and you're like me, who is just very unorganized throughout the school year, don't ask me why, and don't worry too much, because this next bit applies to you. If you have to make notes for specific subjects, or if you just want to remake notes because your first ones were too lengthy or they weren't concise enough or whatever, then I strongly recommend that when making your notes, you only make them from textbooks which are exam board endorsed, because these textbooks directly correspond with your exam specification, and so the content in those textbooks are very important and are exactly what you need to know for your exam. So when making those notes, if you are making them for the first time, ensure that you're ordering textbooks that have a symbol which say that they are endorsed by your specific exam board, board and then make notes from those. Try and get those notes out as fast as possible, and then once they are all done and organized, begin learning them. On the topic of learning notes, one way which I personally love to revise and feel like is a great way to get in revision regardless of what kind of learner you are, is by constantly having revision playing whilst you're doing normal activities. So for example, if I was getting ready to go out for like a family dinner, or if I was doing X, Y and Z, I was getting ready and doing my makeup for example, I would get up a YouTube video to do with a topic that I was learning about in biology for example, and whilst just doing my makeup and doing a task completely away from revision, I would still kind of find ways to incorporate that into my daily routine. When I was in the shower, I would have like a podcast playing to do something that I'm learning about, or again have a YouTube video up. Just constantly get revision in throughout my day, and I found that this method was super helpful because the main basis of getting knowledge into your head is essentially through repetition. So if you're constantly hearing and reinforcing specific facts about something, then eventually it will just get ingrained into your memory a lot better. So if you're able to find easier ways which don't actually require you like sitting on a desk with pen and paper, then I find that it makes revision and learning things so much better, and that is definitely a way in which I was able to learn a lot of information in a shorter amount of time just by constantly integrating revision into my daily routine without it actually feeling that I was revising. I hope that made sense. The next piece of advice in today's video is something which I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about: past papers, past papers, past papers. But I feel like there's so much more to be said about past papers than merely doing them. So how I would personally approach past papers, given the fact that I am a crammer and don't actually have a lot of time to do things because I leave everything to the last minute, which I don't recommend, but if you're watching this video you probably do the same, so hello, is to essentially revise from past papers. So the first thing I want to put out there is if you have the time to get through every past paper of the exam that you're taking, then 100% do it. It's a really great way of testing yourself, seeing how you work under exam. Wow. Seeing how well you work under exam conditions, I meant to say, and kind of just getting into the feel of exams. However, if you are like me and don't have the time to get through every single past papers, because I know for some subjects there's literally so many, then I do still definitely recommend doing past papers, but perhaps picking like a couple from each year and just kind of spacing them out a bit. But that being said, one thing which I do recommend you doing is going through the mark schemes of each past paper, because for me personally, I found this probably the most beneficial aspect of my revision and one of the key ways in which I did well in exams, because as a lot of you guys know, if you have like done GCSEs, A-levels, etc., a lot of the times exam boards do repeat questions, and when they repeat questions, what they're looking for is usually the same, and when you go through these mark schemes, it reveals to you how exactly these marks are rewarded. So I found that from actually going through the mark schemes, specifically for the higher marked questions, really helped me throughout taking my exams, because as I said, a lot of the times questions are repeated. So if you are aware of exactly what they're looking for, it means that if that question does come up, which more often or not they do tend to repeat themselves, then you basically have like 8 marks, 6 marks, 20 marks in the bag, which really does go a long way when it comes to exams and UMS and everything like that. So when tackling these questions for more kind of like regurgitating knowledge, I would essentially go through the mark schemes and get a flashcard, and on one side of the flashcard I would write what the 6 marker question is about, and then on the flip side bullet point all of the things that are on the mark scheme, and then basically revise those flashcards. I'm really hoping that I'm explaining this well. And then for my humanity subjects, my essay subject, which would have like 20 markers for example, again, more often or not, certain questions get repeated, and when you go through the mark schemes and exam papers, you'll kind of get the gist of which questions do come up quite often. For those ones, what I would do is make essay plans. So if I'd known in economics that globalization is something which always comes up on my piece of paper, I would have the essay title at the top and then kind of structure an exemplar essay to how I would tackle that. And so with that, I would essentially go through any potential essay that could come up and then make plans for those, and then essentially just revise my essay plans and my flashcards once all of my revision knowledge had been learned. For me personally, I found this probably the most beneficial technique which I applied for my exams, because from studying past papers and mark schemes, I was truly able to understand what examiners were looking for, and so when creating my answers and structuring my questions, I would always have that in the top of my mind, in the front of my mind. Guys, it's Easter and I've had like 3 glasses of Prosecco before filming this, so if I'm saying things wrong, there's your excuse. But yeah, when answering questions, I would always have that in mind, and I would always kind of remember the things which I'd planned out on my essay plans and my flashcards, which brings me on to the next technique I did. So I did this mainly for my essay subjects because a lot more that goes into it. So what I would actually do to remember the essay plans which I'd created is actually take the first letter from each point I would be making in the essay and then form an acronym. So what I mean by this is, if I was doing globalization, for example, I think for like economics A-level, my acronym was something like, even though Kirsty is vegetarian, she still goes to Nando's, or something really random like that. But the kind of crazier they are, the easier they are to remember because they're so out there. Yeah, from the acronym, the first letter from each word meant something to do with my essay that I remembered, so it kind of would just push me in the right direction. So then what I do is, when I get into the exam, I would always flick to the very last page, see what the big marker was about. I'd hopefully prepared an example essay for it, which I think for all of my exams I did, thank God, because I did go through like all of the past papers and also all of like the big topics in the textbooks. And then I would just remember what my acronym was, which again were very absurd, so were very easy to remember. Jot that down and then expand like what they actually meant. So as I said, even though Kirsty's vegetarian, I would then pick like the I and be like, that's about this topic, and then we'll kind of work my way down until every single point I need to talk about is mapped out. But by the time I get to the big mark question at the end of my exam, I pretty much already have an essay plan, know what to write about, and then can very easily get through it. And throughout my GCSEs and for my A-levels, in all of the big mark questions, I think I always got like 90% of the marks because I followed that technique. So yeah, I definitely recommend you guys following that. And yeah, that is actually the end of today's video, where I have hopefully helped a lot of you guys out by sharing my last minute revision tips for exams. If you guys did enjoy this video or find it helpful, I would love if you could let me know in the comments down below. You can hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, whatever you want, you know, but I really do appreciate all of those things. Also, if you're watching this video and you have a friend or family member who you think would also find this beneficial, make sure to share it with them. YouTube videos, especially like advice like this, for me personally went such a long way and I feel really did help with my results. So if this video can do the same with them, then that would be amazing. And on that note, I want to end today's video with a massive good luck to everyone sitting exams this summer. As I've said, all that matters is that you've worked hard and you've done everything which you can. It doesn't matter if so-and-so gets 3 A stars or if so-and-so gets all A's. The only thing which matters is you and your own path and your own life. So yeah, don't worry about what anyone else is doing. Focus on yourself. Get in this hard work whilst you still can, and I wish you all the very best in your exams. But yeah, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all in my next one. Bye!